Today we're out here at Oak Openings and I want to take you for a hike on the Red Trail and introduce you to one of my good friends, Kelly, who's going to teach us a lot about the Oak Openings region. So let's go check it out. Oak Openings Preserve Metro Park is huge. Coming in at around 5,000 acres, it is home to over 50 miles of hiking trails. But the Red Trail is great for a short afternoon hike and is almost exactly 2 miles in distance. But believe me, before you head out on the trail, you're gonna want to grab a map. One more thing you're gonna want to take advantage of is the stretching station. You do not want to pull a hammy out on the trail. Oak Openings is chock full of the most diverse habitat not only in the state of Ohio, but in the entire world. For more on that, let me introduce you to Kelly Maluski, a naturalist at Metro Parks and someone who lives right in the Oak Openings.
The Oak Openings in the early 2000s was coined by the Nature Conservancy to be one of the last great places on the earth, one of the last great 100 places left on the earth. And the Nature Conservancy is an international conservation organization. So for them to realize that and to acknowledge that this is such a unique habitat is pretty important. The kind of signature habitat of the Oak Openings is the oak savanna. So we've got some oak savanna here in this park, and those are open areas, sandy open areas, where we've got oak trees that are scattered throughout. So actually the term Oak Openings was coined by the settlers that came here as they were moving westward. You know, they came out of the deep forest of the east and they were came to this part of Ohio where all of a sudden they were out of these dense forests and all of a sudden they were these scattered oaks where they could easily drive their wagons through. So they coined the phrase Oak Openings. So you think of that open area where you could easily drive your wagons through. But in the Oak Openings, we want the sunlight to hit the ground. So it's important to have those open areas. So if we don't do things like restoration and management, and even things like prescribed burns that we do, we lose that ability for the sun to hit the ground.
So what's something interesting about this trail that people can look for when they come out here?
On the Red Trail, what I like is that the diversity we see on it. So we start here in these kind of pines where we're at right now, and it opens up to that oak savanna, again, that classic oak savanna where all of a sudden we see scattered oaks, the sunlight penetrating the ground, different birds out there. One of the really neat woodpeckers we have here in the Oak Openings is the red-headed woodpecker, and you almost exclusively see them in that oak savanna habitat. That's what they like. We won't see them here in this pine forest that we're in right now. And it opens up, so you see these different habitats. There's a little bit of terrain out there. You think Northwest Ohio being completely flat, but we do have a little bit of topography here, so you get a little bit of that terrain on that trail as well. And then it takes you right to the dunes too. So not only are you getting a little bit in the forest, you're in the oak savanna, and then boom, you're in the sand dunes as well.
Awesome.
It's a great hike.
Let's go check it out.
Oh, sounds good.
Take a few steps away from the parking lot and your hike begins in a pine forest, which is full of red and white pine trees. Although these trees are non-native, which just means they're not from this area, they are a favorite to many of the park visitors for obvious reasons. This picturesque scenery just immediately instills the sense of wonder that comes with being in the forest, and it erases any sense that you are just miles from the city limits. Follow these blazes and stay on the trail. One of my favorite parts of this whole Oak Openings region in general is that the topography changes so much. We're about to go from a pine forest out into an oak savanna. It's beautiful out there, so let's go check it out. Once you step out of the pines, you're going to immediately recognize that everything around you has changed. Now, if you look around, there's two things you're gonna notice. Oaks and openings. This is a prime example of an oak savanna. No matter what time of the year you're checking out the Red Trail, you are gonna see abundant signs of wildlife. Like, hey, look, a red squirrel. And check out these raccoon footprints I just found. Little guy. She's beaut. As I made my way along the trail, there was something that caught my eye. It's not every day that you see a giant, scorched, fallen over oak tree. So as Kelly was talking about earlier, this is a leftover from the prescribed burns they do here to keep the ecosystem healthy. Now, if you look, this tree up here is just barely hanging on. So if you see something like this, don't walk off the trail and try and get a cool selfie or something. It's not gonna end well. As the crew and I left the oak savanna and made our way to the famous Oak Opening sand dunes, the weather decided to take a turn for the worst. Now don't let yourself get caught out in a rainstorm with improper clothing, like our cameraman. So when you go out for a hike, you're always gonna wanna be prepared with the proper clothing. That means anything that is quick dry, preferably not cotton, Especially on a day like today where it looks like it's gonna rain, you'll wanna bring along a raincoat.
Now that we've got our gear covered, let's drop our packs and make our way up to the top of the sand dunes and learn what everyone is so excited about, and watch as I discover that I really need to work on my cardio. Well, where does all this sand come from, you ask?
Nobody asked you that.
The sand is the remnants of the glacial shores of Lake Erie from over 15,000 years ago. Actually, these sands were here when Lake Erie was a much larger and more macho version of itself called Lake Warren. As the waters of Lake Warren receded, they left behind all this sand. The dunes were then formed as the wind swept through the open landscape and blew the sand up into large mounds. Now by the time you've made it to the sand dunes, you will have already walked about a mile. Good thing they got benches where you can sit back, chillax, and take it all in. Yeah. If you stop and think about it, you are in one of the rarest habitats on planet Earth. Lucky you. This gets me so excited that it makes me, a fully grown man, want to skip across the sand dunes with my buddy and cameraman extraordinaire Jeff. You should try it yourself sometime. I mean, hiking. Or skipping with your pal, whatever works for you, man.
So we started out earlier, we came through some pine forest, we made our way through the oak savannas, and now we're out here on the sand dunes, the famous oak opening sand dunes, the ancient glacial shores of Lake Erie. It's a great place to walk to. Come get a picnic. It's only about a mile from the parking lot. Just come check it out. Come out here all times of the year. It's beautiful.